Alrighty, we are live, ladies. Thank you so much to our community for joining us. Welcome to Talk on Race, Women in Leadership. As always, we start with our land acknowledgement. The Lower Cape Fear, YWCA, serves the people located within the Lower Cape Fear region. This land once thrived with life from indigenous peoples, known today as the Cape Fear Indians and the Wakamasuan Indian people, living in established settlements along the Cape Fear River and Lake Waccamaw, along with many other established sites in the region. We need to protect and honor these places. Indigenous people are not relics of the past. They are still continuing to demonstrate their talents and gifts amidst a backdrop of ongoing colonialism and oppression. They are worth celebrating. We hope our land acknowledgement statement will inspire others to stand with us in solidarity with Native nations. Again, thank you so much for joining Talk on Race, Women in Leadership. And I would like to introduce my lovely panel. Ladies, if you can take yourselves off mute, and we'll start with Velva Jenkins.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be a part of Talk on Race, Leadership, and Women. And I am so excited to be here today. And I am the CEO of the YWCA, Lower Cape Fear. And I am also come from a long history of leadership in the Lower Cape Fear. I spent 32 years with the community college system, and I retired in 2018 as the Vice President of Economic and Workforce Development, and retirement only lasts for a short period of time. And then I was hired by the Board of Directors of the YWCA Lower Cape Fear to lead and also to promote the our mission of eliminating racism and empowering women. And that has been a pleasure to be here since January 2020.
Thank you so much, Velva. Isabela.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, for inviting me to be with all of you. My name is Isabela Lujan. I'm the co-chair of the recently created Latin American Business Council with the Chamber of Commerce. I am a real estate agent here in Wilmington, and this is my 4th year here in the United States. I'm from Venezuela. So again, thank you for having me here.
Thank you so much for being here. Miss Penny.
Good afternoon. Thank you so very much. I want to say thank you to the YWCA. You are definitely an organization that's true and dear to my heart. As past president of the YWCA, I'm very strong about your mission. I continue to support the mission. I am the city clerk for the city of Wilmington, 34 years with the city of Wilmington. It has been a joy to serve my citizens because this is my hometown. And thank you all to the beautiful ladies that I'm looking at. I'm encouraged and very honored to serve on this panel with each of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Penny. Tasha.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tasha Parnell. I am actually a second career teacher. I spent several years in corporate America, and now I am the math curriculum specialist for North Carolina Virtual Academy, which is a 100% virtual charter school here in North Carolina. I also serve as the current president of the Wilmington chapter of Jack and Jill of America Incorporated, and I appreciate so much the invitation to speak today and be in the company of my sisters here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Adele.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am Segovia. I serve as Director of Centro Hispano, our Latinx Center at UNC Wilmington, and also as co-chair of the Latino Alliance of Southeastern North Carolina. It's just a treat to be among so many champions and leaders here in the southeastern area of Wilmington, North Carolina. I am a teacher by trade, educator in the North Carolina public school system or public education system for the past 22 years. Half of that in the K-12 world, and then the other half here at the higher ed, but mainly working with immigrant, migrant, and English language learners community. So a community of immigrant through the immigrant experience in one way, shape, or form. So I love what I do. I am a true Seahawk. Been here for a while now, so it's a pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining us. And last but not least, Ivy.
Good morning. Well, actually, good afternoon. My name is Ivy Murrain, and I am a retired educator. Spent 30 years working for New Hanover County Schools as a social studies teacher at the high school level, assistant principal at both middle and high school level, and developed and opened Wilmington Early College and was their founding principal, and have since retired, but continue to work in the community at various schools, from pre-K all the way back up to high school. Also very active with my church and my sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, where I serve as grad advisor for the chapter at UNCW. So thank you for the invitation.
Thank you so much for being here. And I just want to remind our listeners, if you have any questions, please type them in the chat and we'll be happy to answer them. So ladies, can you please tell me what has inspired you to be where you are? What has inspired you to lead? And I can kind of start off. I have always been surrounded by very strong Black women, very strong women of color who I would get in trouble for like talking at school, right? No, not like, nobody ever thought that I would get in trouble for talking at school though, right? But, I was still encouraged to use my voice. I was still encouraged to advocate for other people, even at a young age. And I will say, when my family moved here to Wilmington, the first 3 strong women that I met in this community was Miss Penny, Tasha, and Ivy. And I will say that you 3 ladies have actually inspired me to be who I am, to join organizations. You foster and love on me in a way that I think some women don't get to experience. And so I will say I have been inspired by watching you all lead organizations and lead the city. But what inspires you? Go ahead, Miss Penny. Oh, go ahead, Miss Ivy.
I was going to say for me, it's like you, a tradition of strong Black females in my life, from the home to the church to the community. I specifically think about my mom, my grandmothers, the women in my church who loved on me, who scolded me when I needed to be scolded, who kept me on the, this is what, had high expectations. I think ultimately having high expectations. Coming from a family of missionaries. And so the idea of being a servant leader was instilled in me from the beginning. And that carried on through college, and I moved here to Wilmington and just wanting to serve and just surrounding myself with women who were leaders in the community and women who were willing to share their jewels of wisdom. And sometimes they didn't know they were mentoring me, but I picked up the nuggets and used them and applied them to my life.
Yeah.
I think that's great. Ivy is exactly right. That's exactly where I was going with the inspiration. My mom was a mentor to me. She was a woman that was the mother of 12 children. I was the young, and she was a woman that believed in love, and she didn't care if you loved her back or not. And that was kind of her motto. Every Sunday, even when she passed and left this world at 97 years old, that would be the first thing. She'd greet you in the name of the Lord and tell you how much she loved you. And she was a strong woman. She was a strong woman, and she did a lot in the Seabreeze community, not just for her family, but everybody's child in the Seabreeze community was her child. Everybody spent their time in our backyard playing basketball. When mother set the table for dinner, while she had 12 kids and didn't have any fancy income coming in with she and my dad, she made sure you had something to eat and a place to go. So she was very instrumental in my life, and she taught us all about love, regardless of who you were. The color of your skin did not matter. She accepted you, and she raised us in an old small AME church that you knew everybody in the community, you knew everybody in church, and you knew every Sunday you were going to be in church. You start out with Sunday school. And so she served in many capacities, and I tell folks, they laugh at me when they say, how many positions do you hold up in Hanks Chapel? And I said, just about every last one of them. Mom gave them up. She said, Penny's going to do it. And guess what? You did it. That was the way our family were, and still is. You take the lead, you hold yourself accountable, and you just try to do what's right by all people. The other person professionally was the late Catherine Bell Moore, who was Mayor Pro Tem for a number of years, and she was a small businesswoman, and she was dynamic. She was very inspirational. She was determined. She set the example. She did not ask you to do anything that she wouldn't do herself, and she really played a major role into my life. And so for that, I say thank you.
You know, Penny, we're so much have a lot in common. Came from a large background myself. I'm the 10th child in my family and the youngest in my family. So we have a lot in common. My mother was I can't remember my mother without gray hair. When I was born, she was in her late 40s. So she was a little older, but she had all the experience of raising 9 others. And so the pattern was already set. I had a lot to follow, big acts to follow with the brothers and the sisters. But I remember my mom teaching me that you work for what you want, and you work hard, and you make the best impression possible the first time. You only get once to make that impression.
Right.
And she said, you make the best impression that you can, and you treat others as you would like to be treated.
That's right.
And not having an education was not an option in my household. We had to go to school. It had to be a 2-year school, trade school, or 4-year school. We were getting out of Mary Bellamy's house. And so that was something I had to do. And then she also told me, you be stern in your beliefs. Do not waver if you believe in what you believe in. And she also said, don't let others intimidate you. You stand your ground. So those are kind of the things that were instilled in me to prepare me for my leadership roles. And you know, something that's funny that I just saw on Facebook, and it reminded me of so much of my mom's teaching. And I bet you ladies have seen this too, because it was just out this week. It says, no matter how you feel, get up.
That's right.
Dress up, show up,
That's right.
and never give up.
That's
And
right.
so that reminds me of a lot of what my mother taught me. And that's how I try to live my life to be who I am.
That's great.
Love that. Thank you so much, Velva. I think I'm going to come back to that, but I also want to get Adele into what inspired her.
Sure. Well, it looks like we're all standing on the shoulder of giants. Very similar experience here. My role models are both of my parents, but through them was channeled the energy of both grandmothers. My dad comes from a line of nine children, only one of them being a female in the household where granddaddy was a general. But truly, the general of the house was grandma. And so she made it clear that what the expectations that were, all the high expectations that we had for the boys were also going to line up with the only girl of the house. She ended up being an engineer, really my role model early on career-wise. But just that mentality very much on what Velva is explaining to us. You get on a mental tank and you plow through whatever challenges come your way, and just stay focused on that goal. Whatever you set your mind to, you definitely have the energy within you and the answers within you to get there. And my inspiration now have really become my daughters. Being a female, I knew early on that I wanted to be a mother, whether by birth or not. I knew that I was either going to adopt or have my own, God willing and God blessing. But just knowing that I had to raise these girls that I hadn't met yet, or these children that I hadn't met yet, to be firm on their own with their own resources, but knowing that it takes a village to raise us and to raise a child. So to lean on the resources that were available to us, but always just keeping that strength within. So they continue to be my inspiration now. When I say my children, now my students are all of my children. My daughters are part of that village and that community that I focus on. So when I see them, when I see my students, I also see them. I see family, I see neighbors, I see future family. I see my the professionals that are in our field, in our community. So all of that, then I take that with me, and I realize that the work that I'm doing is for my daughters, because everybody is my daughter. So
yeah, and thinking about how we stand on the shoulders of strong women who have been in our lives, how has their strength helped you navigate some adversity that you've experienced as a woman in your role?
Well, the adversities come and go, and sometimes I think that we kind of commiserate on what we have faced or what we're facing, only to look back and see what grandma had to do or what mom had to do, and then that really shakes us and kind of sets reality, sets us in shape, and we can do it. We can do it because we've seen the giants do even tougher. With less resources, but external resources, I would say, but it seems like that internal energy and that internal resource that is always within us was definitely very, very strong. So we need to continue to lean on that.
And Jhaniqua, I would like to add something to standing on shoulders and directing your lives and where you go. I remember when I was in high school, I was a very strong advocate for racial justice, and I worked very hard in trying to represent the underserved communities, and it was kind of weird and ironic how I got into that, because I found a letter that was sent to my parents from the Southern Poverty Law Center, and it was about the Tarboro 3 that had been wrongly convicted for rape back in the 70s. And I started doing a letter writing campaign and working. Never thought that would continue, because when I went to college, I got away from that ground root efforts and helping people from marginalized communities and working with them. But during that same time, I was inspired by Shirley Chisholm back in the 70s. I'm probably older than everybody on this panel, but anyway, I was inspired by her because she was the first African-American woman elected to U.S. Congress. And she also became the first African-American candidate on a major party nomination for the president of the United States. You're talking about glass ceilings being broken way back in the 70s. That crack came into that ceiling. But what inspired me about Shirley is her motto. It was unbought and unbossed. And that really inspired me. And I think now, looking 30, well, really almost 50 years later, here I am at the Y advocating for racial justice. So it's kind of weird how things just kind of come back around.
Circle, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, in my case, maybe next.
It's okay. Go ahead, Isabela.
Thank you. So in my case, I come from a family in which social injustice and disparity were always a central topic of conversation back in my country, in Venezuela. So when I graduated as an anthropologist, I was involved with the indigenous movement in my country. And I made my thesis about gender identity and change due to modern time colonialism. So that's a little bit about my background before being a real estate agent back in my country as well. After that, I was also involved with a movement to restore legal rights of lands of indigenous communities in my country. I did that for almost 2 years. So later, I ended up being a real estate agent in my country, and now I'm here. So when I arrived here, it was very shocking for me. I already knew the US, that Venezuela is very influenced by the US. But when you come here, not as a tourist, but to live here, it's a big shock, especially here in the South. So I consider the South like a country inside the US. And now I understand this way better after 4 years living here. So thanks to my work as being a real estate agent here and focusing in the Latino community, I was able to connect with a lot of people of the Latinx community here in this region. And I was confronted by this new reality of having to live and to work in a society in which you have white people, Black people, and Latinos who are like a completely parallel universe at the same time with even different groups on Facebook to communicate between ourselves in our language. So this is something that is happening right now in the Cape Fear region. We have different Facebook groups in which we communicate in our language about all the things that are happening here in this region, right? So there's this multiculturalism that hides behind these designations of Latinos and Hispanics that I find extremely interesting. And there's, besides my family being as an inspiration for me and the way I want to be involved with my community and to help my community here right now, there's also the old experience of sacrifice and resilience of my community. And that has been truly inspiring for me. When I came here, I came because my country is a complete disaster right now. Politically, economically, it's very hard. So when I came here 4 years ago, it was very unplanned. I came here with nothing. I didn't know what to do. And I felt like a victim. But when I started to learn about all the histories behind all these other members of the Hispanic community, I was amazed. And it's not that I think that my journey is not hard, but it's just one example of this whole series of different type of experiences of the Latinx community, what we are enduring as a community here in the US, here in the South, and all the strategies that we developed to be able to do what we do in this segregated society in the South. And I'm talking about the South because it's what I know. I don't know, I haven't lived in any other place in the US. I know these regions. So, and I see how things are, and it still amazes me. And is my community what is my inspiration to do what I do?
Yeah, and Isabela, I would say that I definitely agree and understand. And I think my first moment of like, I need to be more aware of what's happening in the Latinx community was during the voter registration drive. We were pushing vote, please register to vote, please register to vote. But then, we had to stop and say, wait, if you are undocumented, do not register to vote because there could be some consequences to registering to vote. And so even at the YWCA, as we're trying to advocate for voter registration and voter registration drive, we also had to be mindful about what does that look like for every person, every person, no matter their race, no matter their ethnicity, and then to be creative. We're like, you can't register to vote, but let's have a conversation about voting, and let's figure out, what in the future can we help you with to kind of help you put you in a position to be able to vote. And so I think that as we continue to have dialogues, cross-cultural dialogues, and as we continue to partner cross-culturally across the city and the Lower Cape Fear region, I do feel like that there is a lot of hope because all of our communities are resilient, and all of our communities have found ways to not stop and to keep going. Does anybody else have an experience about how some of the disparities in our community, the challenges that they may have presented, and then how you navigated those?
Sure, I can chime in here. One of my professors in college, my undergraduate degree is in mathematics, and my mathematics professor, one of my professors, she was pretty awful. I mean, we all didn't want it. You had to go through her to graduate. And one of the things that she stressed to us, I went to Spelman College, historically Black college, in Atlanta, and she wanted us to know about having fortitude and resilience, and that there are no shortcuts. There are never any shortcuts. So she was very firm in her belief that in this classroom, I'm going to make sure you are prepared for whatever's outside of the gates of Spelman College. And so I took that with me. Hardest thing, I think of all the classes I've ever taken in my lifetime, hardest class ever. But part of that was that tough love that she had for us, and the expectation that for us to be successful, she had to hold us at a very high standard. And I think that a way that I've witnessed disparities in corporate, of course, when I spent time in corporate, being in finance, very few women, very few women of color, and not having role models, mentors, and people you can kind of go to at a very young age. But even when I moved into education as a second career, part of my move to education was the disparities that I saw in terms of, you know, the disproportionate number of Black and brown children who are suspended, who are expelled, who are in special education, you know, who are left out of gifted and accelerated programs. Those are the disparities that I saw. And other spaces in education where kids don't get opportunities to have an exposure to something. And so that was one of the reasons why I wanted to go into education in the first place, is because I had such good teachers in the community, as well as at Spelman College, who really held the expectation extremely high for us and would not let us settle for excuses. And I think that, you know, in education, as far as me experiencing adversity, I don't necessarily see that, but what I've been seeing for myself in my career rise per se, but I'm seeing that, you know, those disparities that I'm seeing for the children that I serve, that's the reason why I went to education in the first place, trying to find spaces and places where I can be a leader and help. And sometimes that is in the classroom, one-on-one with students, and sometimes that's outside the classroom in other ways. Just really that belief that there are no shortcuts, but we all can be held to a very high standard.
So we actually have a question from the audience. The question is, it seems that there's a thin line between being an inspiration and yet not setting standards so high that they seem unattainable. So what does that look like to, I guess, teeter-totter between setting a high standard so that it can be achievable? And I think as women, sometimes when women are under us and we're mentoring them, sometimes we do push them and we set that standard really, really high. So how do you continue to lead and teeter-totter on setting a high standard where it is achievable versus setting a high standard where some women feel like they will never live up to that standard? That is the question from the audience.
Yeah, I would love to answer that, just how I navigate this. I am definitely a believer in the creator. And I believe that the creator has given us talents, strengths, just pieces of his gift that allow us to navigate life. And I have my own check boxes that I go through. Did I pour my work into this, my energy, my values, my morals, and everything that I have a power over? Are those boxes checked for me? If I can truly say that I have checked them, I am at peace with that, knowing that there are some things that I have no control over, but as long as I have given it my all with all the gifts that I've been given, the rest, I realize that it may be out of my control. So I have found that peace to center me and also propels me forward to try again or to try to navigate a different path in the journey. but knowing that I have done my part.
Mhm.
Adele, I
like-
would just like to say to Adele, amen. That was so well said. And I think I can really say ditto to her on how I live my life and how I come out, because I have a 15-member board, and I'm sure each one of them have their own expectations of me. And Penny, you was the president of the board, so you know how that goes. But I have a standard as well, and I know what my talents are, like Adele said, what we were given as from my creator. And I make sure, and when I've done my best, when I can say that I truly done my best, and I did it within the standards of this organization, then I have achieved success. I truly have.
And I think you also have to take it, and I agree with both of Adele and Velva, but I also think sometimes you recognize talents in people that they don't know that they have.
Mhm.
And so I think you have to encourage them, push them to help them develop that talent, whether you personally have the skill set to help them or you know somebody, you put them in contact with somebody who can help them. But again, recognize what your own talents are, what areas that you have to continue to work on. My father used to told me once when I was 15, I was struggling with geometry. Math was not my subject, Tasha. And and he said to me one night, he's like, I don't understand why you don't understand. And we went round and round, and finally he helped me logically connect the dots and gave me a purpose for learning what I needed to learn, because I just didn't see the point. And he finally said to me, you need to get over yourself and get out of your way and check yourself and where your mirror is. And are you only thinking about yourself, or are you thinking about others in the big picture? And so I say all that to say, we have to know who we are. And that's a journey. That is a lifelong journey. And where you are at 20, where you are at 30, where you are at 40, 50, 60, is different. You develop talents, you develop skills to enhance the talents that you have. And so you have to pass that on to the next generation and encourage, set those expectations, but guide them in helping them achieve, because what you will achieve regarding that standard may look different from that other person. And accept that and not be judgmental about it.
So as we're talking about the lessons that we have learned and how we mentor the younger generation, what are some lessons that you've learned along your journey that you would like to share?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Jhaniqua. I was going to follow up Ivy. I do a lot of volunteer work, and one of the things
Yes, you do.
I coach cheerleading over at Williston Middle School, and that's a very challenging school, because you have all walks of life. Kids have different, and you have to be very careful when you're dealing with young people, and you have to be encouraging, and you have to set the example. Most of them know me because my two daughters went to Williston and Gregory. And so then you have the younger kids that got older sisters and brothers that know my kids, and they'll be like, oh, Miss Penny or Coach Penny, we're not like your kids. And you're exactly right. But you gotta stay in tune with the fact that they may not have all those things that everybody else has, all the better things in life. And so, but they do have a talent. Every one of these young people have a talent. And I tell my cheerleaders that. I had 22 last year, and I said to them, you think you can't do this, think of that. And maybe they don't have the fanciest clothes or have all the money that's okay. That's okay. We're going to get there. Miss Penny is here to find a way. And so I have sponsors, I have mentors, I have folks that I can reach out to encourage these young people, because that's what it's going to take. And I'm steady learning. I'm steady learning something from them as well. but you have to be compassionate. You have to be understanding. You have to know that there are different challenges. Things are different than when I came up in this world, in this society, but I'm constantly learning. And I do depend on my maker. I do. I say a prayer coming out. But at the end of the day, it's what's best for them. Everybody may not fit the same bill, but they're individuals. You respect them, you encourage them, and they're young. They've got to grow up, and you just hope the best for them.
And I would like to add, I guess when we think about a lesson learned, one of the things that I've learned in my career, we've moved a lot. My husband and I have moved with our children to 8 different states, and so we're not native to Wilmington. This is probably maybe our 8th move here. And I think one lesson I've learned, because I was in corporate and moved to education, so many things have happened, is that you don't have to have everything figured out before you take the first step. And I think a lot of people think a lot. I was in finance. I'm a math teacher. I'm thinking, processing, analyzing all the time, but we need action sometimes and not just thinking. So I try to encourage people to say, hey, can you take the first step? And a lot of times you may not feel ready for situations, but you may be just what a place needs. There's seasons for things. There's times, because I've moved so much, there's seasons to be in a place with a group of people, leading a certain group of people and encouraging a certain group of people, and then that season may end. And going back to what Adele said about having gifts and talents, they make room for you. I've been in places that I didn't think I should have been, talking to people that perhaps I shouldn't have been talking to. And it's because I was just open and I allowed an exposure to become an experience. So if you get exposed to someone or something or an opportunity, take it. Don't be afraid to speak up, ask questions, go a little deeper, contact someone who maybe you think, well, they don't want to hear from me. But let an exposure become an experience, become more than just something you encountered. So that's a lesson I learned along the way that I think has helped me, and I hope I can encourage other people to do the same. Just take that first step, and then somebody will meet you at the second one.
Tasha, I have that very line I have on my notes, be open to the journey, be open to the journey. And so I'm glad that you mentioned that. I also wanted to add that we keep on trying to find the magic potion for work-life balance. I don't know why we should call it life-work balance, because I think life actually does come first, but just try not to get stuck in the working. We want to work to live, not live to work. But I have some lessons learned definitely to share, that sometimes work may be the easiest refuge to go to. I would say that I am a recovering workaholic. And so we want to also face whatever it is that we may be finding that refuge, the reasons why we may be finding refuge in work. That becomes actually quite easy when you may have to face some difficult decisions, maybe trying to build or rebuild personal relationships, or do some self-inquiry, just trying to either push out or not want to face discoveries about yourself. So all of those things are really, really hard work. And then actually our jobs may become the refuge to not confront them quite yet. So definitely a lesson learned in not leaning or finding that cave or that refuge also in the work, because we love our work and it just becomes easy that way.
And I also learned along my way is that do not be afraid to give the autonomy to your staff to do their job. You're going to be selected.
Thank you, Velva.
Jhaniqua, I think I do that.
Yeah,
but it's still, as a good leader, you want to empower them, give them the autonomy to do their job, and then, but you also you want to expect and then inspect. So you expect them to do the job, and there's nothing wrong about inspecting to make sure the job is done. So I've learned that through my life. And I also learned, don't be afraid to move out of the seat for someone else to fill that seat. And that's why I retired, because I knew my staff was ready and I didn't need to sit in that seat any longer. And then when I moved, someone else could move in that seat.
Thank you, Velva.
In my case, it was very important for me, life saving for me actually, to know what my motivation was. You know, being here and doing what I was doing when certain possibilities of advocacy were offered to me, like this, being co-chair of the Latin American Business Council, and when you become when you start to represent a community, it's a very difficult process. If you don't have experience doing that in the past, if you have been doing advocacy in the backstage but never up front, it's a very complicated, complex process when you start to represent. And I think that to know what my motivation was very important for me, and it still is something very important. To not compare myself to others. That's something that is very hard for us women, I think.
Yes.
Very hard. You may compare some of yourself with people who you admire, but also with family members who have everything you wanted, but you don't have. or family goals that I don't have any children, for example, and this is a hard thing for me. So to not compare yourself to others, I think that's something that is essential for us as women. And also, this is also has been something very important for me, is to know that you're always going to be afraid. That's going to be with you always. Is the way you handle that fear, the way you are able to manage that fear, and to put yourself there and just to say, okay, maybe you have an accent, maybe you don't know how to speak properly yet, but at least you're going to be able to put your message out there. You know, I think that's the three most important things for me that I have learned in this recent journey.
Isabela, I wanted to share a quote that I learned from one of my students that has said, I may speak with an accent, but I don't think with one. And I should bumper sticker that one.
Thank you so much.
I love that. And if we was at church, that's what we would say, amen, right?
Amen, yeah.
That was so inspiring. Okay, we have another question from the audience. Okay, let's see. How can I say this? Because we still live in a male-dominant society, how do you stay true in sharing your real thoughts and deliver with precision as the boss? And also following up with that, who has been your mentor in leading with confidence and transparency? Woo, thank you, Yolanda, for that. Good question. So I'll try to reiterate it again. First part is, how do you stay true in sharing your thoughts and deliver with precision as the boss in a male-dominant society? And then following up with who in your industry has been your mentor to help you lead with confidence and transparency? That's a big
Just say quickly, I think one of the things with that first question about how do you, in a male-dominated society, I think one of the things that I learned very early is that I had to be prepared. So, perhaps that meant I had to be more prepared than, and talking to the people who, we would do analysis and you have analysts who work for you and you have to get information from them and all these different things, but really being prepared, really understanding all the people who worked for me, what their contributions were. And so when I went in those rooms, I took the time to make sure I understood all the pieces and the parts that went into the things that I was presenting, making sure that I took time to, I still do that kind of to this day, that I practice sometimes what I'm going to say. Really making sure when I come into the room that I am coming into the room as someone to be respected and heard. A lot of times when we're doing analysis, people are coming to you for recommendations and they have to be feeling confident that what you're putting forth is something that they can rely on and say, yes, we can make, millions of dollars worth of decisions based on things that you say. And so I would just say, always be prepared. Find an ally, whether it's somebody on your job, whether it's someone outside, someone you can run things by and talk things through with, or just listen to you, but find an ally somewhere. I've been very, very blessed that everywhere I've been, especially in corporate, I found those allies. It didn't always work directly with me, but I found other women who would sit with me. We were allies, we were coworkers, but they would allow me to walk and talk through things with them and helped me to make sure when I walked into the room that I was prepared. And you're right, you're always going to have a little bit of fear, but we do things, we step out on fear all the time and do hard things. But I would say make sure you're always prepared when you walk in those rooms, and people eventually will see, hey, this person has something that's going for them, and they'll start to recognize that they can trust your recrecommendations and things that you present.
Tasha, that's right on what you're saying, because, and it's not just for fitting into a men-dominated field. That is for people of color. Those are great tips just for people of color. You've got to be prepared. And I mean, not 100%, but 110%. And you've got to project with confidence. Like I was saying, that my mother says, don't let no one intimidate you. You've got to project. If you ever show a little bit of intimidation, that is going to be your downfall. So be able to project with confidence, be able to know your materials and know your subject matter. And another thing that Tasha said that I cannot agree so much more with is find that ally. Especially when you're coming up against a promotion or an opportunity for a new position, if you've got someone to validate, to say, yes, you have those skills, yes, you have that education and that experience, that will help you move forward. Great point, Tasha.
I wanted to piggyback on.
Yeah, very, very, very right on for both. And you have to know, be confident. You definitely have to be confident. And I don't know why folks say this about me, but I don't seem to have that problem letting anyone intimidate me. Normally I am the only one, and Velva, you're right. It's about color, and most every place I go and meetings that I'm in, I'm the only one that looks like me. And then of course I'm the only female sometimes. So you must know and be prepared and be confident. And that's kind of the way I've always been. Not that I'm bragging and boasting, but I'm a very strong Black woman. My mom was that way, and my grandparents and everyone else. However, respect folks, and my bosses, as you all know, are mostly men, and I respect them, and they truly do respect me. And my mayor will tell you, he tells everyone I'm the one to run the cities, when I'm like, no, mayor, please don't do that. I make sure I know the material, I make sure I know the issues, I make sure I know, I do my homework. But when you step in, and it's not a male dominating situation in my career, it's mostly women, but we do have a few males in this field. But when you go talking about my elected officials, whether it be Wilmington or county officials or state officials, you have to always be prepared and talk with confidence. And if for whatever reason I make a mistake, I own it. I apologize, but let me see if I can't get you the right answer. And so it does work, and I'm very appreciative.
I want to piggyback on what all of you are saying. As a principal, I mentored people who wanted to be principals. And my number one thing is, you can be shaking on the inside, scared out of your mind on the inside, but do not show it. Right. Even if you don't feel confident, show confidence. And being prepared, knowing what you know it well, but also presenting it well. For some people, especially when you are a woman of color, the expectation is when you are passionate about something, you come off as being the angry Black woman or the angry woman of color. And sometimes I invite that. I'm okay with that, because there's nothing wrong with being passionate about what you believe in. And standing up for what is right and standing up for what you believe. And I believe it was Velva saying, holding true to who you are. We all talked about the influence our mothers and our grandmothers had, and that's what they did. And we're only doing what the generation before and the generation before and the generation before that has always done. And that is we hold true to who we are and what we believe. And you have to do that on your job. And that goes in connection with being prepared.
Mhm.
Ivy, I would like to say one more thing, Jhaniqua, then I'm going to be quiet. Ivy, you were talking, Ivy, you were talking about, the angry Black woman. There is one thing that I learned from a mentor who was a white male that was my ally, that told me one time, and it resonated with me because I would always get a little bit hot up under the collar about situations because there was a lot of racial tensions and a lot of disparities on my job. But he would look at me and he says, Velva, pick your battle. Be careful how you pick your battle.
That's right.
And he wasn't trying to tell me, it's not an issue, it's not a concern, but be careful how you go into that battle.
That's
and
right.
make sure you're prepared and make sure it's the right one to go after. So I just wanted to share that for the younger ones that are in
I agree.
leadership positions.
I agree. And for example, once I was accused of being rude, and and I said, if you knew me very well, you would know that was not me being rude. That was me being firm and standing my ground. And again, it goes back to the expectations of how we are supposed to act in the world, be it on your job or in public, whatever. There's an expectation, especially for women of color, that we're supposed to be subservient. And we should conduct that and act that way. And when you don't, then you're being rude.
Right.
And as I told this person, I was not being rude. I just stood my ground and told that person what I was and was not going to do. And that was my right and my authority as the principal to make that decision. And I wasn't backing down. And they were just, sometimes people expect us to always smile through it, grin through it. And no. So I agree with you. You do have to pick your battles. And then sometimes you can pick the battle, you can fight that battle, but it's how you fight it.
That's right.
Because you can put a smile on your face and people think you're okay when in fact you're not. And say what you need to say and get people straight.
Well, ladies, this has been an amazing conversation. Our chat box is actually full of questions. So I apologize to the audience who has some really good questions. And we unfortunately ran out of time, so we are not going to get to them. But what I will do is have everyone has about 40 seconds to do a closing remark. And you can end with either what continues to inspire you to do the work, or you can end with a resource or a nugget that you would like to leave with our viewers. As always, you are welcome to promote your business if there's a business that you have or an organization that you're a part of. And I would like to thank, of course, Velva Jenkins, who is actually on the panel today. She is our CEO at the YWCA. So thank you for your leadership and your ability to empower and inspire others. And thank you all for watching. So we will start with Miss Penny.
Thank you so much, Jhaniqua. I truly appreciate it. It's been an honor to be on this panel with these phenomenal women who are still standing. If there's anything, you all know where to reach me, mentoring, whatever I can do to give back. The fight is not over. We must continue to love and respect one another. And for that, I say thank you.
All right, Tasha.
Well, I guess my little nugget would be just to surround yourself with like-minded and positive people. Find those people. I think that I'm part of the the Jack and Jill family we have here in Wilmington is trying to find those like-minded people that you want to do life with and surround yourself with. So I would encourage even young people, even my high school students, I would say to them, hey, you know, look at the people who are around you. Are they pulling you up? Are they pulling you down? And trying to find that ally or that one person, even as a high school student, even as a middle school student, but finding those people to line yourself up with, and then always be available to give back, even if you're not being seen. So those would be the two things I would say. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And Adele.
Well, it's been a pleasure. It continues to be a pleasure to work with all of you. I definitely look forward to more collaborations and maybe a part 2 of this conversation, since we're definitely left hungry to continue the dialogue. I just want to encourage everybody to mentor and be mentored. No matter where you are in the ladder, always mentor and be mentored. The more that we mentor, I feel like the more we gain. So the more we give, the more we gain in so many shapes, ways, shapes, and forms. There is one book that I always recommend to those that I mentor. That is the 4 agreements. And I'm just going to quickly go through those 4 agreements. That is, be impeccable with your word, meaning say what you mean in the fashion that you mean. Don't take anything personally. Again, we talked a little bit about this, getting on that mental tank and not letting negative influences hit you. Don't make assumptions, meaning prepare well and don't assume anything moving forward, and always do your best. Again, going back to those check boxes that we talked a little about. So I look forward to hopefully round 2 of this.
Thank you so much, Adele. Ivy.
Well, Adele sort of took my nugget, and that is to find a mentor. Even if they don't know they're mentoring you. I have a lot of mentors in Wilmington who didn't know they were mentoring me. Every opportunity I would get to talk to certain people, I would ask them specific questions, because I'm watching. You never know who's watching you. And so, again, be a mentor, and be willing to be mentored.
Thank you so much, Ivy. Isabela. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry.
There you go.
Yeah, thanks again for having me with you all here today. This was very inspiring for me. My message would be for, if there's someone of the Hispanic community, a woman who's listening to this conversation, and if you have more questions, please reach out to me or Edel. Be open and be willing to learn, to grow. If you have an idea, you need to know that there are ways that we can help you to develop that idea in the business area. Remember that I'm the co-chair of the Latin American Business Council, and what we want to do is to help people like you in the community of the Latino community to develop your business idea. So please reach out.
Yes, thank you so much, Isabela, for being here. And then we will end with Velva.
I am so grateful to be on this panel with these amazing women. We have a Lord Cape Fear powerhouse of women, and I'm so grateful. My nugget to leave with our audience is never stop learning. Continue to find workshops, classes, and networking opportunities. And I think this statement from the past still stands. It's not what you know, it's who you know. So reach out to others and join that network, and also be well-read. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. Y'all have an amazing evening. Thank you for joining us on Talk on Race.